Fallout 1 is one of the games of all time. It is the watershed that supplements the entirety of the themes and mechanics of the future Fallout games, Butchery by Bethesda in some part withstanding, and stands out as one of the greatest CRPG experiences of all time. I have done more runs than I can count on both hands in this game, but I wanted to flip the game on its head as many people would do with any of the other Fallout games by answering the question, can you beat Fallout 1 without any equipment? In my first attempt for this run, I picked up Speech, Unarmed, and Outdoorsman as my tag skills and splayed my special points as shown here. Then I got all the way to Mariposa Military Base, 1/3 of the way through the game for those uninitiated, before realizing that Outdoorsman never triggered. I looked up the skill online and was immediately hit with the cold water that the Outdoorsman skill was buffed in Fallout 2, meaning that it was a useless skill in Fallout 1. So I decided to stop that run and restart with my second character. Having gone through 1/3 of the game, I at least learned a bit about this run. That's why, on the second character, I threw Unarmed to the wayside in favor of Sneak, in addition to changing Outdoorsman to Science. Little would I know the problem Sneak would be plagued with until much later into the run. To explain the challenge, it is important for me to lay out what I mean by equipment. For the sake of this run, I treated equipment as any item in the inventory that was either a weapon or an armor piece. Armor is rather self-explanatory, but if you have never played Fallout 1 or 2 before, I will let you know that there is only one armor slot in the game, with that being the body armor slot, meaning there is only body armor in this game. Wearing no armor is limiting in this game because there are some major parts that can be made simpler by equipping the proper armor/faction uniform. I will go over this more when those come up. As for weapons, I would like to provide more clarification for this by stating that any item was considered to be a weapon if I could enter combat and then spend ability points to directly damage someone or something. Laying out all the options these stipulations remove, guns, melee weapons, and throwable explosives were out of the picture for this run. The item that teetered on the edge of being considered a weapon, but I ultimately did not treat as one, were placeable explosives. I found those to be more akin to tools than equipment, but the times I used them in this run were fairly purposeless, so this did not matter much. To recap the things available to me, I allowed myself to use only healing items, placeable explosives, skill check tools, keys, caps, obviously, and my bare hands. In terms of combat, this meant that I, as in specifically me, was incapable of dealing damage. If I wanted to fight enemies, I had to get someone else to do it. Which is why, as soon as I left the vault, I got to Shady Sands, and I had Ian kill all of the scorpions in the cave. Convincing him to do so was easy, but he turned out to be a pretty useless character in this run. As it turns out, if I'm already coming into the game thinking about fighting as little as possible, having a companion just makes running away harder. So I took him to a place where he could be useful, Junktown. Inside of Junktown, I used him to kill the assassin trying to kill Killian, and then I used him to kill Gizmo with the help of Killian and co. I also gained the knowledge of where Necropolis was at some point here, which was the home of the first milestone of this game to complete. I did not do much else in Junktown, so there's nothing really else to talk about with Junktown. Looking back on this run, I lightly speedran the game when I was playing. I say this because right after going through Junktown, I did no quests in the hub. For some reason, I've been pretty allergic to doing quests in the hub. The way I did spend my time in the hub was stealing all the cops' stim packs and ammunition so I could sell the ammunition for books. I did have to look it up, but I got the junk from the hub too for later. I knew that there was junk in the hub, it just slipped my mind on where it specifically was in the hub. After reading all the books I bought and saying hi to Harold, I left the town and made my way to Necropolis. If you have never played Fallout 1, the first main questline objective that is bestowed upon the player is acquiring a working water chip. This is the only timer that is placed upon the player, with it needing to be turned in within 150 in-game days. Necropolis, home of the ghouls, houses a working water chip, but it requires taking it from the ghouls living there. Necropolis is a weird location. The ghouls do not attack immediately, but if you step closely to them, they will attack you. I just snaked my way over to the sewer entrance and toward the ghoul leader. I had to look this up because, as I said earlier, I was practically speedrunning, and he indeed was just named a ghoul leader. I told him about how I was going to rob them blind while also flashing him the junk that I had in my trunk. Catching on to this, he gave me some books. I used those books along with my feminine wiles to evade having to fight the super mutants and then fix the water pump, which led to the last time I would really use Ian, inside of Vault 12. Vault 12 was a vault where the door was left open, meaning that all of the people inside were irradiated and turned into ghouls, hence why Necropolis is like this. The front door is guarded by 2 glowing ghouls, which I averted by using Ian as a scapegoat. At least I tried to use him as a scapegoat. He made short work of them, making me think that Ian was overpowered and probably the true main protagonist. Or at least that was what happened in my first character. With my second character, I actually just walked right past them with the sneak skill, which made me think it was good. It was then just a hop, skip, and a jump to getting the water chip from Vault 12. The ghouls in the vault did not attack me as I did so. I sped back to Vault 13 to turn it in, with these elapsed events filling me with experience points. With the first third of the game done, I decided to immediately get started on the imposing threat that was the FEV vats the super mutants controlled. This was also the point where I decided to ditch Ian. I ditched him in a random mountain, but he should be fine. I then made it to Mariposa military base with surprisingly 0 hiccups. Because of my high speech stat, I was led into the base rather handily. Many of the super mutants are pretty stupid here, evident from the fact that they believed I was a super mutant when I told them I was. All except for one super mutant on the 3rd floor, who was the only real hurdle of going to the control computer. This is where I hit my head against a brick wall trying to get this sneak skill to work. I never used sneak in this game before this moment, so I was really trying my best to use it in the way I thought it would work. To simplify this for later, I will explain how sneaking actually works in this game. Sneak is one of the shittier skills in Fallout 1. The way it works is that it negates the ability for other people to enter combat with you as long as you are not detected. This means that outside of combat, it is simply worthless. What you have to do to get it to work is that you have to enter combat, then start sneaking, then walk around the enemies. Enemies will not attack you so long as you are sneaking. While this sounds fine and dandy, what makes the sneak skill worthless is that the player exits combat automatically if no enemies are pursuing them, so you will leave combat midway through sneaking only to get caught by at least one enemy, meaning that sneaking fails in its core function it is supposed to perform. What this means for me is that, in my second character, I started by sneaking, got caught because I did not understand how sneaking worked, then just ran past all the enemies. At least enemies do not follow you through doorways. At the computer, I easily activated the sequence to blow up the base because none of the children of Cathedral there made an attempt to defend themselves. But then, this is when disaster struck. As I was going back up the elevator to leave, I was caught by one of the super mutants. They killed me and I lost a ton of progress because I forgot to save. I tried to run past the super mutant again, actually banging my head against the wall trying to get past, and eventually gave up, opting to instead do more quests for experience first. I scrambled across the realm, desperately trying to find the Brotherhood of Steel base. The Brotherhood of Steel in this game are just a group holed up in a single base underground. To join them, you need to go on a fetch quest to acquire technology from a super radioactive place called the Glow. To prepare for this, I bought a rope, which is required to enter the location, and Radaway. Yep, just Radaway. I was supposed to make a quip here about how Rad-X stacks in this game, but I guess I just forgot to get it in this run. Either way, I made my way to the hole in the ground. If you paid any attention to the special stats I chose for this run, you should already know that my character has a rather low carrying capacity, so I had to abandon much of the base's riches. If you do happen to play this game, please take this area into account when buying things because this place is a treasure trove. There are many different weapons, drugs, and even a good set of armor lying in wait for the player to acquire. Things that our character could not really take advantage of, but any other player could. As to explain what the Brotherhood of Steel wanted here, let it be known that the only thing the player had to do was get the holodisc from the first floor and they were done. But I wanted to do everything here. So I went through the song of dance of getting all of the keycards and fixing the generator when something funny happened. I got addicted to Radaway. I already knew this was a feature of this game, but I imagine that any regular Fallout player would find it surprising that such a seemingly important drug would be addictive. Another thing that happened in this part was that I tried to kill one of the enemies here with a placeable explosive. I did kill one singular enemy, but it took 2 whole explosives, which is why I really did not treat explosives as weapons in this game. The way placeable explosives work is that you have to activate them in your inventory with a timer and then place them, making them useless in combat sequences since the timer is dictated by turns in combat. For this reason, they would only work on the enemies here who are dormant until you fix the power. For some reason, you can still kill them in their dormant state and gain experience, which is what I tried to do. It turned out that I did not have to do that since I could just turn on the power from the same source I could turn off all the robots. I would say more about that source, but they do not actually have too much of an impact on the game. The source in question is a hyper-intelligent computer that you can prompt for a bunch of lore of the game and play games with, which is dialogue only. As a final note, I also got a stealth boy here, which felt like it still did not matter with the sneak skill to be shown very soon. With the base fully explored, all the things I wanted picked up, and my brain full of lore from the hyper-intelligent computer, I left the base to return for the Brotherhood bunker, and after dying twice, once due to the game bugging out and all the robots attacking me anyways, even though I disabled them, as well as once due to radiation poisoning, I finally turned in the disc and joined the Brotherhood of Steel. At least I did after randomly doing a pit stop at Junktown. I guess I wanted to see if there were any quests I could do, but instead I just discovered that iguana bits were actually human bits. Now in the Brotherhood base, I desperately tried to get the Brotherhood to help with the military base, but ultimately failed to do so. I knew you could get backup to help with the super mutants, but I must have missed the timing to ask for help or did something else wrong, so I ended up just getting the knowledge that I needed to beat the last part of the game easily. I think what I did wrong is that I needed to know about the base first, but I had not discovered the military base yet in this save. After failing to get the help of the Brotherhood, I just decided to brave the base once more. This time I had much more health, so it turned out to be much easier to just run around the super mutant. What did happen to make things harder, but also weirdly easier, was that the alarms were activated. What this did was activate more force fields in the base, but for some reason it also turned off the AI of the annoying enemy on the 3rd floor of the base, enabling me to just run past him. The other super mutant weirdly decided to move down the hall, and I had to run past him, but it was not really annoying enough to dwell too much on. Then came the crux of my ire with the sneak skill of this game. Because the alarm was turned on, the front door of the base was now guarded by 3 new super mutants, each really good at killing me in one hit regardless of my longer health pool. I made many attempts to sneak past these 3 enemies, but still did not figure out how sneaking worked, so all the attempts failed. This was when I straight up looked up how sneaking around worked. When I figured out how to use it properly, I still failed because of the exact thing I was mentioning earlier with how sneak worked. Eventually, I made it past the 3 guards, then died outside the base to the guys there. Yes, indeed, this was a double-layered annoyance in this area. I did get a good vantage point where I could save right before the 2nd layer, but I want to emphasize just how annoying the 2nd layer turned out to be. I was using the Stealth Boy at this point, but it is such an annoying item to use in this game. It turns off automatically when you transition to another area, which means I would go through the front door and it would turn off. Not that this mattered, mind you, because the super mutant at the front automatically discovered me when I went out the front door. This was a constant I had to deal with. These super mutants were also ridiculously accurate too, capable of hitting me from anywhere I got to. Through pure trial and error, I eventually made it through the area and succeeded with blowing up the entire base, the escape alone taking longer than the entire first third of the game. This would lead me to the final part of the game, which is sweet-talking the Master. Before I move on to the final part of the game, I'd like to explain the plethora of ways this entire previous part would have been simplified with equipment. For one, power armor, which I could have easily acquired from the Brotherhood, would have enabled me to tank all the damage from the super mutants. The super mutants at the front use miniguns and rockets, which are worthless against power armor. Yes, rockets don't do shit to power armor. The power armor is actually plot armor in this game. The other even easier thing would have been for me to just get the Children of Cathedral robes, which is the faction uniform that makes all mutants ignore you. This would have completely trivialized the military base. These 2 pieces of equipment alone would also make the last part of the game simple, with the faction uniform being exceptionally useful to skip the whole last part. With that out of the way, the final boss of Fallout 1 is an amalgamated super mutant known as the Master. He resides in his own location known as the Cathedral, leading the faction I mentioned earlier called the Children of the Cathedral. There are multiple ways to defeat them, with the way I did it being the most boring way. But killing the Master was the easy part of this whole excursion. What was actually difficult was getting to him. To get to the Master, I got the help of the Followers of the Apocalypse, with their scouts. Laura, who is part of the Followers of the Apocalypse, opened the door for me to get to Morpheus. Weirdly enough, rather than offering the player the red pill or the blue pill, in this game you have to steal the key off of him to get into the secret underground vault below the cathedral, which was a bitch for me to do as my character. The cathedral above ground is peppered with Nightkin, all wielding the biggest, most annoying weapons in the game. And the cathedral has multiple floors, which meant that the bullshit that is sneaking would be at its worst here. I forgot to mention this at the base, but the player exits combat automatically when transitioning through areas too, in addition to the stealth boy turning off. This means that I would automatically aggro the Nightkin on these floors and was forced to just run up and down the stairs. By some miracle, I managed to finally get the keys for the underground vault. Making my way down there, I once again had to deal with the Nightkin, but what fully gave me pause was when the secret door did not open with any of the keys. I still do not understand why I get 2 keys from Morpheus, when only one of them actually does anything worthwhile. Either way, I just waited for the NPC inside the vault to open the door on their own. At which point, the follower scouts, who were instrumental to getting through this whole area, killed him and enabled me to get into the secret pathway to the vault. The secret pathway, which is a death trap because there are really strong enemies there. I made innumerable attempts to get past the enemies here, still sticky with the sneak skill, but eventually made it. Then came floor 3. This was the point where I had to admit something. It had been so long since I had beaten Fallout 1 last that I did not realize the whole time that all I had to do was go through the doorway on the eastern side of the southeast room to reach the master. So I spent another countless number of attempts trying to open the other door in the western room with an elevator behind it, which was completely unnecessary for my way of beating the game. I tried everything to open that door, and after banging my head against the wall for so long while at a finish line that was the wrong one, I thought to myself that I needed more luck and more lock-picking skill points. So I loaded an older save and went to Addendum to get 2 free luck points. I also went to Vault 15, which I skipped, in hopes of getting more experience to level up. I had to do the whole song and dance of getting the keys from Morpheus, which I once again miraculously did, as well as getting to floor 3 for the second time, which turned out to be a bit easier since I finally figured out the sneak skill fully. But I was still chasing the wrong pathway by trying to open the door to the elevator because I took some dynamite I found in Vault 15 and tried to blow up the door. When this failed, I rage quit the game, thinking I should just call it quits for now. But then, at that moment, I randomly regained my will to continue. What happened was that I figured that I might as well check out what was beyond the door in the southeast room. And lo and behold, there was the master. When I saw this, I was really kicking myself for not realizing he was in this room the whole time. I went through the very simple dialogue tree that would make him choose to self-destruct the cathedral. All you really have to do is get the evidence from the Brotherhood that super mutants are sterile and cannot reproduce, and have a bit of intelligence, charisma, and speech. Then it was time to escape. By this point, I was fully aligned with the tactics of sneaking that I made it out of the cathedral without a ton of difficulty. With my escape from the area, the church blew up, marking the end of the game and answering the question at hand. Can you beat Fallout 1 without equipment, i.e. armor and weapons? The answer is yes. In fact, you don't even really need companions either, funnily enough. As long as you overdose on stim packs, you will be fine.